Hey guys, just trying to get these last little bit of notes in for you guys while I have to be gone today. Just a quick reminder of last time that we talked about the structure of the eye. You guys completed the eye dissection as well, and in the human eye, it's very, very similar to the structures that you saw on the cow eye as well. I have my little mini eye model here to show you also. The one thing that a lot of students get mixed up is the difference between the cornea, which is of course that clear outermost layer. It's actually missing from my little model here. And the lens. So the lens itself is actually deep within the eye. So you can see the sclera here is the white part. The brown here is the choroid. And then if I open it up, remove my vitreous humor, and my lens is literally a little disc that sits behind the iris. So as light comes in, it will pass through the cornea, the aqueous humor, through the pupil, the lens, the vitreous humor, and then hopefully eventually hit the optic disc or the blind spot at the back of the eye. So when this happens, you will have very high visual acuity. If you've ever gone to the eye doctor and they shine that really bright light in your eye after it's been dilated or we've relaxed the iris to open it up, this is what they want to see. They want to see a choroid that has a lot of good blood vessels. They can see that optic disc, which is the optic nerve where it leaves the eye. And then that area of highest pigmentation is called the macula lutea. This is where most of your photoreceptors are found. And then the fovea centralis is the area of highest visual acuity. Hopefully, the light that enters the eye is going to hit right on that fovea centralis. That will give you the best 20/20 vision. We talked about the astigmatism chart on Thursday, and people with astigmatism, it just means that either their lens or their cornea is a little bit misshapen. So instead of it focusing perfectly on that fovea centralis, the image is just a little bit off or a little bit tilted. We also have in exercise 24 some of these color vision charts, and of course yours are black and white, so you can't see these. But if you have normal pigmentation in your cones for color, you have all three types of cones, then you should be able to see a 74 in this diagram. The next one you should be able to see a 26. Again, some of this coloration might be a little muted as we go through the computers, so if you can't see those numbers, go visit your eye doctor. All right, so because of refraction of the lens, images that pass all the way through those structures are actually inverted left to right, and they are upside down. So what's interesting is that your brain has the ability of correcting these images so we actually see them in the right orientation. If you have an eye that just naturally has perfect vision, then you have an emmetropic eye and you are very lucky. But for the rest of us, myself included, that do not have perfectly shaped eyeballs, it means that you have to have correction, either contacts or glasses, that will allow that light to be refracted in just the right location to give you perfect vision. So somebody who is nearsighted is when the eyeball is longer than it should. So you can see objects up close, which is why you're nearsighted, but you can't see objects that are far away. This is the most typical kind of vision issue that needs correcting. Hyperopia is the opposite, where you can see things that are far away, but focusing up close is a lot more challenging. And then astigmatism, as we already talked about, is where the cornea or lens or both are just a little bit irregular. So the vision is blurred regardless of your vision correction. So here we have examples of a nearsighted or myopic eye, a farsighted or hyperopic eye, and you can see how those lenses can correct those issues. And that brings us to our final sensory structure, which is the ear. So the ear is a really special structure because it has actually two sensations that it is responsible for. It will be, of course, your sense of hearing, but it also is responsible for your sense of equilibrium, which is just a fancy way of saying balance. So the ear itself is divided into three functional regions. Here I have my big giant ear model. The outer ear is the part that you can see. Then we have the middle ear, which is the part that contains our auditory ossicles, which mine fell out. Here they are, the auditory ossicles. So this is my middle ear, and it would normally just sit right there in the middle. And then the inner ear is the part that includes the cochlea and the semicircular canal. So outer, middle, inner. Okay. That inner ear is the really important part where the actual sensations of hearing and equilibrium occur. And remember that it is possible to have issues with hearing in a couple of different ways. And as we talk about the structure, we can talk about how that works. So here's a nice diagram from your textbook showing external, middle, and internal ear. So some of these structures that you should be aware of for your lab quiz, the outer visible area that's made of cartilage and skin is called the auricle. Then we have the external auditory canal. This might be where your earwax builds up and you try to get it out. And then the tympanic membrane is called the eardrum. It will vibrate in response to sound waves, which are then transmitted to the ossicles. The ossicles, and there's actually 3 of them, are actually the smallest bones of the body. From, I guess it would be lateral to medial, so from out to in, it's the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. Each of them are little bones, and they actually have synovial joints between each of these teeny tiny bones. So that's why sometimes people that have arthritis, inflammation of their joints, can actually go deaf as well. They can cause hearing loss because we have inflammation in those teeny tiny joints between those ossicles as well. And then the inner tube is called the auditory or eustachian tube. If when you were a baby you had a lot of ear infections, they sometimes put in artificial tubes into those to widen them because they can be very, very small in babies, which leads to buildup of fluid, and that can lead to infections. Its job when it's open and clear is to regulate the air pressure on the other side of the tympanic membrane. Some other structures, the oval and round windows, the cochlea, and then the semicircular canal. So these are all structures in your inner ear. So we have our little model here. This is our big old vestibulocochlear nerve that's coming out of our sensory structure. So both of our sensations come from different regions. The cochlea is named after its snail-like appearance, and that is where our sense of hearing comes. And our semicircular canals, there are 3 of them, and you can actually see that they kind of come in X, Y, and Z orientation. These are the ones that have fluid inside of them that will tell you, like when you're moving or when you're standing still. These help with your sense of balance. Okay, when we're looking at our cochlea, the stapes is this little thing sticking out right here, and it sits in the oval window. So that little space around it is the oval window. And then the round window is on the other side. This is actually that releases the pressure created by the vibration of the stapes in the oval window. Okay. So here is the diagram that you should know for the lab quiz. Just give you a minute to copy that down. The auricle itself is probably the least important part of the ear. Its job is just to funnel sound waves down the external auditory canal and get them to the tympanic membrane. The malleus is attached to the inside of the tympanic membrane, so any vibration that occurs there will then be transmitted from the malleus to the incus to the stapes, to the oval window, through the cochlea, and then eventually to the cochlear branch of the vestibulocochlear or auditory nerve. You can also see at the bottom here this auditory or eustachian tube and how it can be very narrow. So if we get any type of infection in this region, it can really cause a lot of ear infections. And repeated ear infections are usually treated by widening this tube so that any fluid can just drain. So sound waves will enter the ear through the external auditory canal from the environment. They just get funneled in. This causes the tympanic membrane or the eardrum to vibrate. These vibrations are then transmitted through our 3 ossicles. As they go through the oval window, they are amplified. So each step along the chain moves the signal and then also makes it bigger. That's what amplification means. So a vibration that might be quite small in the environment, like a little cricket chirping, will be amplified so then it can be sensed by the ear itself. They're transmitted through the cochlea via fluid pressure waves. So it's kind of like dropping a pebble in a pond. It causes those waves that ripple out. That's how the cochlea works. The stapes makes vibrations at the beginning, and then it's transmitted through the spirals of the cochlea until it eventually reaches the vestibulocochlear nerve. And if I'm going too fast, guys, just feel free to pause it while you write it down and then start it up again. The nerve impulses will eventually pass through the thalamus into the primary auditory area, which is in the temporal lobe. So it doesn't have to go very far. So here we have just a diagram showing that whole process. Remember that this is actually a mechanical sensation because it's vibration, it's movement that is being felt all along the way. So equilibrium or balance is our last sensation, and it really exists in two forms. Equilibrium while I'm just sitting here, so I don't feel dizzy, I know I'm just sitting still and I can sit up with proper posture, is called static equilibrium. If I were to get up and start walking around, if I'm not dizzy and I don't fall over, we call that dynamic equilibrium. The ear contains sensory receptors for both, and they're part of the vestibular apparatus, which is these semicircular canals, and they will again come out the vestibulocochlear nerve, which is cranial nerve number 8. So the way it works is there's fluid inside these little structures, and as you move your head, the fluid sloshes around, and that sends a signal down those nerve fibers. So you can see when you're standing still, the fluid is still, and when you're moving your head, the fluid responds. So the development of the eyes and the ears is actually pretty amazing because they're not necessary structures for the development of the rest of the fetus. They do begin about the same time as the brain and the heart and the spinal cord, but they aren't fully functional until about 16 weeks. So right at the beginning of that second trimester, between right before that first initial ultrasound where a lot of people find out the sex of the baby, the eyes and the ears are beginning to work. So in utero, baby can see and hear. It's pretty amazing. Unlike dogs and cats that are born with their eyes closed and their eyes aren't fully developed, human babies do open their eyes right away. They even open their eyes when they're still in utero and can actually see light. They can see light that has passed through mom's skin or in that amniotic fluid. They can also, at birth, tell mom's voice because they've been listening to mom talk all the way through development. They can also recognize other people's voices, like if dad talks to baby when baby's still in utero, or maybe grandma or grandpa. And it's been shown that babies can actually recognize different voices immediately after birth. So that's pretty cool. Smell and taste are not affected by aging until around age 50. Gradual loss of receptors means that your senses tend to get dimmer with age. Hearing loss is actually the biggest problem that I want to talk to you guys about with our last couple minutes here. It used to be by age 60, about 25% of individuals had noticeable hearing loss, but with the increase in the amount of time people spend with earbuds in their ears, now it's nearly half of kids your guys' age have hearing loss, which is crazy because you shouldn't at this point in your life. That could include ringing, roaring, buzzing, or pain in the ears. So please be really, really careful of how much you use earbuds, the volume at which you use your earbuds, because it can lead to permanent hearing loss. And that's not something you should be dealing with for another, 50 years. Some other disorders and diseases, macular degeneration is the loss of vision, especially in that macula lutea. If the retina gets knocked off of the back of the eye, we call that a detached retina. That's usually because of trauma, like a car accident or falling. Glaucoma is when the retina has increased pressure. Tinnitus is just ringing in the ears, and then chronic dizziness is called vestibular disease. All right, so that wraps up all of our notes. Thank you guys for watching this video. Feel free to rewind, rewatch, and pause as much as you need. There are crash course videos on all of this stuff as well, so if you're highly confused, I would recommend Googling up crash course special senses, and there's lots of good information on there. Have a great day, everybody.